Hey everybody, it's Dave from Flash and Dance DJ and Production Services. How are y'all doing out there? Here it is on Wednesday, May 6th. Hope everybody is enjoying themselves. I am gonna use a real world story here. We are continuing our video series here on Waves SuperRack Performer, which I have loaded on my MacBook. Gonna use a real world example from this past weekend. So I worked with Prince tribute called Love Sexy. Really awesome band. I had been wanting to see them for a while. They performed at an old venue I worked at one point called the New World Tavern. I couldn't make it to that show, so I was a little upset. Anyway, so they ended up playing the Jetty, which is the new venue that I work at. The front of house guy that is on and off again with them really wanted me to go in and work with them for this particular show. The house guy said he knew them, he was going to take care of them. So I said, all right, no big deal. So I turn around and do all my prep work for the following day. I planned on just staying home, relaxing, working on some karaoke stuff for the country club. So long story short is I get a phone call at about 4:30 on Friday, the night of the performance, and the house guy is having an issue with his van. Okay, no big deal. The thing is, everything is prepped for the next day. So I don't have my wing ready to go, my wing rack that I normally like to take with me, my M32C. However, I have the capability of getting to my DL32 and all my microphones and stuff like that. So I pack everything up and I go. I end up talking to, as I'm loading stuff up at where I keep my stuff, I end up talking to Chris, the drummer. He explains the band, how they're self-contained and things like that. And I said, all right, not a problem. So I get down to the Jetty about 6 o'clock and get everything done, situated, everything's perfect, everything's good. Well, here's the kicker of this. Remember, I just said I don't have my wing rack and I don't have my M32C. We have an X32 compact that's in-house. I don't have a profile set up for this band. However, what I do have, and that sometimes you luck out with, because my friend mixes this band, he sent me the scene file, which is basically in essence a profile for this band. And it gives you your input list, it gives you gains, your monitors, all that stuff. So I had to do a little bit of tweaking to the profile, reset some gains a little bit. No big deal. We all mix our own way. So set that, did all that. And the reason why I'm talking about this is because at the end of the night, the band had musicians, had audience members come up to them and said, and I'm not tooting my own horn here, this is just the quality of work that I put out, that, hey, by the way, it was very intelligible. We could hear the vocals, we could hear the guitars, we could hear all the instruments. That's all I was hoping for that was going to happen that night. So, with that being said, what we're going to talk about today is, part of it is why I'm saying it wrong, but I'm not dependent upon SuperRack. What it comes down to is SuperRack is another tool. I've talked about this before, where SuperRack is like when you're making food, like a meatloaf or a cake, and your channel strip you have, whether you're on the X32, Midas HD96, a Pro 2, whatever you may be on, is it nice to have plugins? Is it a bonus thing to have? It is. But you have to know how to set your gains, how to use what's within a channel strip with compression, EQ, gating, your gain structure. If you're driving it into a bus, if you're using DCAs, you have to get that all balanced first And then when you add something like SuperRack on top of it, it adds that something that is you. So with that being said, I'm going to turn the camera so you can see SuperRack Performer here. And what we're going to talk about today is keyboards. Now, keyboards are a multifaceted and, in my opinion, one of the most fascinating instruments on the market. The reason why is because you can get anything from any company that manufactures it. You got, like for me, main brands I see all the time is Yamaha, Nord, Sony, Korg. Yeah, there's all kinds of other brands that I don't even know. But anyway, so what ends up happening is, depending upon the band you're working with. Now we'll take two examples. I didn't have this set up for the Prince tribute, so we'll talk about that, and then we'll talk about the Redneck Castaway band that I deal with, which is a Kenny Chesney. So when we talk about something like Prince, I had I had keyboard 1, 2, and then I had a third keyboard. So the third keyboard was more for accents, like little things that fill in those gaps, whether it be special effects or something like that. The main keyboard player, just as most of us know who listen to Prince's music, he had synth bass, he had synth, he had pads, he had all that kind of stuff. Well, the band had that as well. So the drummer played a set of, I think it, not SPX 90, I forget what it is, but it's the drum pads. He had a set of drum pads, and he would sometimes play clicks, sometimes he would play electronic drum sounds, and then the keyboard player would play more of the synth bass, special effects, organs, keys, all that normal stuff. So you have that. So you would process that in a specific way. And then the other one is the Redneck Castaway band. Now, the guy in that band, Larry, he is evolving. I haven't worked with them yet this year. I'll be working with them at the Jetty, so I'll be learning that day. I'm going to be using this configuration that day, and I will just modify what I'm doing, because when I'm working with him with Red Solo Cup, the last couple of times it's only been 4 inputs. So he's given me a stereo right and left and a stereo right and left. So the way that I've actually started changing it is, instead of the way it used to be, which was piano left, piano right, organ left, organ right, Nord left, Nord right. So basically what those would be is, obviously as they're labeled, piano, organ, and synths, or strings, or pads. So now let's take a look at that, so that way you have an idea. Let's move the camera so you can see the screen, and we're going to zoom in. I want you to be able to see what's going on the screen. Okay, there we go. Perfect. I'm going to try and sit back a little bit. It's that way. Okay, so the first 2 channels we have here is piano left and right. So now, as I've discussed in other videos, that how I feel about what these plugins do and why I like them so much. So the first one we have is the SSL channel, and I use the piano preset. So when I had the piano channels coming in, so mind you, there's right and left, and as I talked about before, when you have 2 channels, you have to process them the same, because what's going to happen is you're going to get latency on one side, and if you have no plugins on the second side, whether it's going to front of house or just the monitors, you're going to have an offset inside of them. It could be up to 5, 6, 10 milliseconds. And if it's offset like that, they don't arrive at the same time. So that's a problem you have. So you have to process them the same. So a lot of times when it comes to these kinds of channels, you're just duplicating and replicating. So once you come up with a nice sound, and the other thing I've said before too inside these videos is if you can get a hold of multi-tracks or individual tracks of whatever you're trying to figure out, whether it be piano, bass, keys, whatever, this is the best way to do it. Run multi-tracks, and then if you can run it through this, it'd be great. That way you can listen to it and know how it sounds. So I use the piano preset from just generically, that's built into the SSL channel. Then I go into the C6, and for me, I found the preset for piano A worked the best because it gave me a little bit of raise in the upper register from about 4K and up. And it's not very high because you can actually go up to here, but this is a very subtle slope, so it just gave me a nice little additive. When Larry would play the higher end of the keys, it would give a little bit more oomph behind the higher stuff. Then we've got the Vitamin, which I'm using the preset for the bright piano. It actually gave a nice rounded sound. That way, even if he hit the lower bass keys, it would still give a little bit of body to it, but it would focus on the mid-range. So as you can see, the upper is raised a little bit, the mid is completely dropped, but the low mid is really where I found I got a lot of the sound on it. Now to bring the piano up in the mix and have it live in the mix right below the vocals is the CLA 76. Which is had a FET transformer in it, so so SSL warms it up. This just brought the body of the piano. So as I said, both channels were set the same, exactly the same. Now, this was the organ. If you notice, we go from having Vitamin to no Vitamin on this. So basically, because this is an organ, and typically with an organ you're going to have like a Leslie or something like that, I wanted to have it sound warm, but I wanted something different that was going on with it. Now mind you, you're also got to keep in mind, if you're working with a tribute act, not whether it's a tribute act or somebody who's covering songs, you have to try and make some of the sounds that are coming off that stage. Remember, we're in the business of sound reinforcement, meaning taking what's on stage and translating that for the crowd. But then we're also not sound reproductionists, meaning that we're not trying to reproduce sound. When you're working with a tribute, you want to try and get your sounds to be as close as possible. And I know what people are thinking right now, but Dave, you just said that we're in the business of sound and reinforcement, not reproduction. Reproduction is where you're taking something and you modify it, or getting it as close to the original. The band is who is going to get things as close as possible to the original, and then I just try to translate what they're trying to do and bring that across to the audience. By using plugins, I can get things that are maybe this close to that much closer, getting them so much closer to what people are used to hearing. So I use the vintage ribbon. This is there's just something about ribbon microphones in the studio. I don't know what it is. I've heard them on guitars. I've heard them on drums. They just sound amazing. So that's what that is, to warm it up. And then on the organ, I didn't find any real organ sounds that I really liked that were inside of the C6. So I just used the piano B. It had a very subtle, so this is bumped and that's bumped, but it's got a very subtle slope to it. So it's very, very nice and simple. And then the same thing. I just used on this one, let's see. So this one is called Rock My Piano. So this is just a generic compressor that allows it to be tightened up and brought together. So now if we look at this side, so on the other one so on the left side, I had it set, and people are going to wonder about this. People will say, why are you using a vintage on the left, but you're using a modern on the right? Because I don't want them to sound exactly the same. I want a little bit of different coloring in there. Not because I really want them to be different, but it allows, when it hits the stereo spectrum, it allows to give a little bit more character into your mix. So that's what I'm really using Waves SuperRack for, where I'm not dependent upon it, like I talked about the Prince thing, the Prince tribute I worked with, where I didn't even have a chance to use it. It's more about coloration a little bit. I'm not trying to saturate. I'm not trying to overly do something. I'm just trying to add a little bit of me, what I feel needs to be in that instrument. C6, exactly the same. Piano B and CLA 76 should be exactly the same as well, which I actually have a dedicated organ for it. So, and why it wasn't on the other one, I don't know. That's just why. I think it was just my wording on it. So now, as you can see with this channel, we're back to this. Now with the Nord, a lot of times with Larry, he's playing a lot of pads, he's playing a lot of stringy, those kinds of things. So for me, the string preset worked the best. It gave me the best warmth that I enjoyed. Then the C6, I had that set to tight pad. So as you can see, it's got a little bump here in the mid-range, and then it dips down a little bit in the high end. So the sounds are not as harsh. And then I have another string setting, which, as you can see, it's almost like a roller coaster. It goes up like that. So it kind of rounds things out a little bit. And then my setting here is Rock My Piano. And that's just so that way it brings it up in the mix. Now, Nord right should be almost identical. Exactly. So I have a string setting. I have a Nord setting as well that I have another Nord, but these are also based upon those other presets I was talking about. It's that easy to really, once you start knowing things, you create presets. Now here's the thing, you go from one computer to another, sometimes you can copy your stuff over, but for me, I would rather go and build things from scratch and make things and put things down on paper or in my phone and rebuild them and know that, hey, this is what I'm going to use. So with that being said, I'm going to move the camera back over so you guys can see me, and I'm going to zoom out as well. All right. So with that being said, I hope everybody enjoyed looking at what I'm doing for my keyboards, my organs, my strings, my pads that I'm using from a keyboard player standpoint. This series, has taught me a lot about people out there and what they're doing and what they're using in the live sound world. And my story at the beginning was just to show that if I didn't have any money, yeah, I'm making money with what I do, but let's say I couldn't afford to have this anymore and I had to discontinue using the license, I still can mix without it. So that's what it comes down to, is if you want to use something like Waves SuperRack, you treat it as a non-dependency. There's guys who run them through servers and stuff like that, and that's fine, all well and good. But if you only have one server and that server goes down in the middle of a show, what's going to happen? You're going to lose all your audio. By me using this as a native product, if the MacBook caught fire or crashed or got corrupted for whatever reason, screen cracked or whatever, and I couldn't use it, the show isn't dead in the water. I just have to revert to my old instincts of how I mixed on analog. That would be the difference. So, with that being said, make sure you turn on notifications, you like, you subscribe, you comment, you find me on socials, you follow me, and if you have questions, make sure you either leave them below or message me. You can email me, whatever you choose to do. Also, don't forget, make sure you treat everyone as you want to be treated and learn one thing every day. I'll see you on Monday for next week's gig log.